So, welcome to the panel. This is the another research panel, Women at Work, Perceptions and Aspirations. We're talking here, or this afternoon, original research, or great original research that was conducted by these colleagues that are sitting here. And I will present each one of them just before each presentation. We will keep the question and answers to the end. So I'll just present each presenter or each researcher. They will come up and present their study and the highlights of their studies. And we will go on until the end of the session. At the end of the session, of course, we will be open to Q&A. Okay? The first presentation called Silence of the Girls. It is going to be presented by Janelle Belmas and Peter Bukowski at William Allen White School of Journalism and Mass Communication, University of Texas.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for having us today. We've been talking a lot about women in leadership roles, sort of at the starts of their careers, the middle of their careers, and the end of their careers. Peter and I decided to go younger. We were interested, actually I learned about this from a group of women at the Communications Bar Association called Women in Communications Law. They're a wonderful group of women. And they had been approached by Frank Lamonte, who's head of the Student Press Law Center, asking about research, talking about girls' voices. When he dug around, he realized there wasn't very much research, original research that had been done on the voices of girls. And so we decided that, I'm like, I can do that, we can do that. So I brought it back to Peter, and Peter said yes, and so this is where we are. We've done a pilot study on one group of young men and women in a southeastern state. And I'm going to just talk briefly about some of the things that we found. So our major research question was, are there gender differences in the restrictions put on student journalists based on gender? So we asked very brief questions, very brief questionnaire, all right? Only 5 questions to the kids, because we wanted their kids. They're, anywhere between 15 and 18 usually. We asked what their gender was, and then we asked a few questions about their experience with censorship, either self-censorship or censorship by others. All right. We know from past research that being a student journalist is good for you, all right? Peter Bukowski has made a career out of looking at how journalism kids are that much better than your average high school kid. They're more civically minded, they're better communicators, they're more apt to get involved, they're more likely to be better voters, all that good stuff, all right? So we know from that research that it's good to be in journalism, all right? More than 90% of U.S. schools offer some form of journalism, whether that's yearbook or newspaper or some amalgam of media product. And we know that about 18% of all high school kids participate in some form of journalism. And we know, research, this has been echoed and echoed and echoed today, we know that journalism classrooms are dominated by women, all right? Public relations as well. We know the statistics are that a lot of girls get the fire in the belly and go forward in journalism. We also know from research that's been presented by Judy and others that they don't quite stick around. And why is that, right? So we asked a couple of questions, as I said. We asked the questions of, have they been censored? Have they self-censored? What kind of stuff did they want to cover, etc. We went to a southeastern state, and we surveyed 461 kiddos. 300, this makes it easy for me to remember, 361 were girls, 100 even were boys. So 78% of the respondents were girls. And there were a few girls in there in private schools, but we surveyed them all kind of generally just to find out what they were at and what they were interested in. One of the questions we asked them is, what topics should student media cover? And these are direct quotes. Topics people will be interested in, but it is important to discuss topics outside of the reader's comfort zone to inform them of current events. So it's not just about the cheerleading squad or the baseball team or the prom. It's about current events. So we were delighted by that. We thought that was awesome. All right? What else? Oh, gee, presidential candidates and the upcoming election, how teens can make an impact on politics. Peter and I nearly wept when we got this because we're like, yes, This is showing everything what we already thought was true, all right? But 38% of all respondents were told by a school employee, whether that's a principal, vice principal, teacher, not to cover something in the media. You know, we'd like that number to be 0 for both genders. But right now it's about 38%. 41% of girls, 28% of boys. This is something we understood anecdotally, and we knew anecdotally from experiences that had been reported to us by women working with young women working with the Student Press Law Center. They have been actively censored, told, thou shalt not. Okay? Now, 88% of girls, 64% of boys were told and then did not. In other words, they didn't, you know, say one of these, we're going to do it anyway. They obeyed, right? We also asked about students, and I don't think I have a slide on this, I don't. We also asked students about whether or not they were self-censored. I didn't put this in, but I thought about it after we were talking today. And students, about 47% of students had decided themselves, all students had decided themselves not to talk about something because they were afraid of the repercussions. 53% of those were girls, 27% were boys. So girls self-censor almost 2 to 1, right? What kind of stuff was censored? Gee, does this look like 1975, 1985 to you? Marijuana, LGBT issues, same-sex marriage. There were kids who reported we were not permitted to talk about same-sex marriage, even though it was all over the mainstream news that year. Religion, politics. Our religious students said that they weren't permitted to talk about Santa Claus or Halloween either. That was pretty small. But you can see that sort of these things are important. These are the things that are relevant. What else? Anything that might offend, upset, disturb, be harmful, touchy, or sensitive. In other words, what we want to have them cover. Right? I want to give you just a few quotes here. Yeah, here are some other ones too. Mental health. A couple of kids wanted to do talks about suicide, sex and pregnancy, dress code policies. I love this one. Poorly performing athletics. And personnel issues. Here are the actual quotes. We are asked to refrain from discussing, get this, any topic that would shed negative light on our school, even if it is honest and important. One young girl told me, she didn't write this down unfortunately, but she said there was a relationship between a teacher and a student, and we all knew about it, and people were like, well, why aren't you covering it? Well, we were told not to. Talking about anything religious, any sort of subject that may, quote, raise eyebrows. Pregnancy rates in high school, abortion, and politics. We were told not to mention any of our athletic teams losing. We are asked not to talk about serious topics like suicide and car accidents. And finally, because we're in a southeastern state, we were asked not to write about the Confederate flag. We were not to write about standardized tests that would make the school look bad. We refrained from writing about anything that required anonymity in case we had to reveal names. This is what causes us to weep in sadness, right? So again, the research is replete with examples of women being silenced, being interrupted. One of the studies that was done in Finland actually recounted a pair of girls who would go to a math class with a roll of masking tape every day, tape their mouths shut because they didn't feel they had the space to speak. All right? We know that girls are really happy, let's come back here, are really excited about talking about topics that are important to them. Making the topics off limits, as their administrators have done, does them no service. So again, we're concerned about this. This is a pilot study. It was done in one state. We are hoping to work with Frank to secure funding, maybe, the good Lord willing, to get us to some other states. When I presented this to the Women in Communication Law Forum a couple days ago, how time flies, they were very excited about it and talking about mentorship, and I got some connections to maybe do some kind of central band Rust Belt states and maybe something in the Pacific Northwest, perhaps. So we're hoping to replicate this a little more. And you know, Frank has been very kind about providing us with the opportunity to publicize this research. You know, when I talked about this to the kids at JEA, I do a censorship thing. I'm a media law scholar by trade and training. And when I talked about this to the kids there, the guys were raising their hand and saying, yeah, you know, we think that's true. We're not as told as often as the girls are. And I said, well, you know, we want all those numbers to be 0. All of those numbers should be 0. But that said, This research is important to inform administrators who are interested in making sure that our girls have voices. We want to be sure that everyone has a voice, but we know that now that girls are disproportionately affected. Right? So that's, again, the basics. The paper will be coming out. It's been submitted to a couple of fora. We'll see what happens with it, and that's all I got for now. One other thing quickly, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. Theactivevoice.org, my colleague Karen from Student Press Law Center, has this one-pager on it. It's available at theactivevoice.org. And again, this is just here to a principal, here to a whatever. And like I said, the paper we hope should be coming out soon. So thanks very much, and thank you, Karen, to the Student Press Law Center.
The title of our next presentation is What Women Tell Women About Working in Communication. This is a study done by our own Robert Gucci and a group of his students. So it's Robert Gucci and Samia Black, School of Journalism and Mass Communication at FIU, Florida International University.
Thank you. I'm Professor Gucci here at FIU.
I'm Samaya Black here at FIU.
And I'm only going to speak for 20 seconds because I'm coming out of a cold and I'm not the most important person on the stage, and I want to have more students involved. So this was, the Kopenhaver Center over the last couple of years has put out amazing webinars and seminars that have been recorded digitally and are archived. And you can see them on the websites under the seminar and webinar buttons. And we saw that as a really great opportunity to do more with the videos and to understand what women are telling women about working in communication. Very similar to what's happening today, but to do a qualitative analysis of it. And so with that, I am going to step aside and let Samaya talk, and then we're going to get a demonstration of an interactive website that was put together by a team from Whitworth University, and Erica Sulkin. Dr. Sulkin is at Whitworth, and she led a team, and Ozzy's here, and Rachel's here, and there were 2 or 3 other students from Whitworth that I hope that they can mention as they show you that website. So you can take the data, take the findings, and turn it into something that's solution-based, and they did a great job creating an interactive site for that. This is phase 1 of our project. Phase 2 is going to be turning this into an academic journal, probably over summer, which they don't know about the schedule just yet. So with that, I'm going to step aside and let some other people come up and answer some of the questions. Samaya.
Thank you. Our research team had the opportunity to analyze 15 hours of data, the webinars that were recorded at the Kopenhaver Center, and we were able to extract 4 overarching themes that women professionals in communications were sharing. The first one is group empowerment. Women tend to be competitive in communications fields, and in the workplace, they tend to work by themselves and take on the burden of tasks alone as opposed to collaborating with each other. Our speakers encourage women to collaborate with one another because we'll be able to share skills and be able to progress further as opposed to just doing it on our own. And they said this is something that's lacking, and it could be something that could really help us move forward and be able to seize leadership positions in the communications field. Another theme is identity and purpose. Women tend to have to make decisions about work-life balance because of social norms. There's a lot of stereotypes about you go home, you cook, take care of the children, and not too much of having a career and being able to devote that time to it. Our speakers encourage women to understand and own your purpose and your truth. So who you are and what skills that you have, and also be able to know that you can work as a women professional and have a leadership position, and also be able to take care of your family and also have a personal life.
I'm Carolina Estrada, and I'm part of this research team, so thanks for letting me sit down here. Our third team would be issues and perception, so that's when we touch base on how women face immense gender bias when they get into the workforce, and how when they are trying to get a job or any leadership positions, when a woman is assertive, then she's seen as bossy or arrogant. Their behavior is not seen as equally as it is for a man, where he is seen as, assertive and strong, and, all that gender bias that's always, I guess, just predominantly been quite an issue for women in leadership positions, and how women are also viewed as a nuance when it comes to leadership as well, and their styles. So our speakers talk about that, and they talk about that difference that I was just saying, how they're seen as arrogant, as emotional, as Susan Goldberg was basically saying. They touch upon our feelings more than our work ethic and our work style. Then another one of actually the last thing would be taking chances. So that's where the leaning in comes into play, and just being assertive, being out there. Speaker said that women traditionally were not really encouraged to take those chances. We're more encouraged to stand in the sidelines and kind of just do our thing, and very subtly, very respectfully. So women, it says that women forced to find opportunities to learn new technologies. They feel like they have to be more versatile than a man. They feel like they have to know more than a man, be ultra prepared, other than a man should be, because they're women. So they talked about how our potential is enormous, and it's just as it is for our counterparts, who's equal as men. So we kind of just touched, the speakers touch upon that, and taking chances, and how that's our struggle, will always probably be our struggle. So that's what we have to be, probably more assertive and more out there than men, because that's just our struggle.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and also touching on the taking chances thing with identity and perception. Our speaker said that we are nurturers at home, and we're bridge builders. We have a lot of qualities that, as women, we take on, and if we apply those same qualities in the workplace, it would really benefit us. Thank you. Okay. All right. We also collaborated with a team of students at Whitworth University, and they're going to present our website, and you guys can log on and look at it for yourself later.
Hi there, I'm Rachel Rogers. And then I'm Ozzy Brooks. We are part of the team from Whitworth University. We also have Haley O'Brien and Emily Goodell, who aren't able to join us today. But we were able to collaborate with FIU on this project and take this cool data that they put in this report and just put it on a more usable platform so we can share it and people can come and interact with the data. And so we're very excited about sharing this website with you all today. So I think Ozzy is going to share some of the sections.
Okay, so the first section that we have are the numbers don't lie, which shows the data that we've seen multiple times, that women are in the communication field and they're pursuing the communication field more, but the men are in the leadership. So as you can see, here's the woman and then the men, and it's a very interactive piece I really enjoy. You can hover it and you can see the percentages, which is really cool. And then you can compare and contrast data as well. Okay. So that's the big section of being the numbers. Another section is the solutions, which is answers the questions, how do women in communication field communicate with each other? So the first one is leadership training, and that's basically bringing in new ideas. Women bring in new ideas, and we are very diverse, and we have different leadership styles. As Diane Lynch said, different environments have different types of people and leadership styles, and so we need to embrace that identity and use it in the work field. And then the next is mentoring and why it's beneficial. So 35% of women who have mentors have better opportunities, and they get hired more, they get higher pay, and this website is not just reading the data, it's not looking at the data. You can interact on Twitter, and you can read what other people have been saying. The next one is speaking up. Just to summarize it really quick, good things come to those who wait, but faster to those who take. So basically, just speak up and go get, just go get it. Go and experience the field and go network, basically, essentially. The next one is leaning in. So you're pursuing your career and how to communicate in that field, whether it's confidence, creativity, and then we have more videos, and we also have more interactions, Twitter, and we also have sections where it jumps to different sites, parts of the website, which is really cool. And then the last thing is voices. So it has further reading, and in the words, which is the participants who have certain quotes, and you can look at them. You also have meet the participants, the people who have been interviewed, and then we have a cool section that is share your story, which Rachel's going to talk a little bit more about.
So one of the biggest things we wanted to get across is that this isn't just a report to read. This is something that we want people to participate in. So that's why we've put links to Twitter. You can see what people are saying about the topic. You can see the videos. You can see what all these interviews look like. But you can also share your own story. Right now we have a question: what is the biggest challenge for women in communication? And so you get the opportunity to put what you think the biggest challenge is. And underneath it, these are some different answers that you can put. And as you hover over them, you can see common themes, how many people are saying it, and just what the biggest struggles seem to be by the numbers. And so you get to participate in this website. And that was the biggest goal for this project as we were working with FIU. So yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next presentation is titled Far From Parity, Women Still Underrepresented in U.S. Media. Our presenter is Crystal Williams-Chancellor. She's the Director of Communications, Women Media Center at Washington.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank Lillian and the Kopenhaver Center for the opportunity to speak today and to share the research from the Women's Media Center, both original research and research that we've compiled. Every year we have a Status of Women in Media report that we issue that is a look at how the media has represented women in that past year, whether it be in television, film, radio, newspapers, across the gamut. Unfortunately, the news, for the most part, no headline to all of you who are immersed in the work, is that women are still far from parity. Although there has been some progress, there is still much progress to be had. And so I will share some of our original research as well as some of the studies that we've compiled in our Status of Women in Media report. Again, the media is failing women on every platform, whether it's in politics, film, television, social media, gaming, all across the board. The Women's Media Center last year commissioned our own original research. We looked at 20 media organizations, both in terms of newspapers, wire services, broadcast, and internet sites. And we surveyed over 27,000 pieces of content and found that, as you can see, that the representation of women is still not near parity of 51%. The internet has done better than print and broadcast and wires, but as you can see, they still also have a lot of room to grow. In broadcasts, PBS has done the best, primarily because they have two female anchors, as you are aware, of Judy Woodruff and Gwen Ifill. But if you look at ABC News, CBS News, and NBC News, you'll see that the news is not as good. Men still overwhelmingly report the news, 64% of the time for anchors. And if you look at include correspondents and reporters, it's 68% of men who are reporting the news. You'll see that this obviously had some change at NBC News because Brian Williams was replaced, but those numbers still have not changed, although obviously some more ethnic representation. Again, for broadcast, there was some discussion earlier about how women have not done as well in the higher ranks of television news, but in terms of the news staff, we represent 41%. You may have noticed on cable news, if you look at who the guests are, who the experts are, women overwhelmingly are in the minority. Whether it's on some of the morning talk shows, Meet the Press, State of the Union, again, the numbers are 70% or greater for men. Minority representation, as you know, the number of ethnic minorities is growing. At the time that we did this survey, 36.9% of the workforce were people of color. Only 22% of that workforce in television is representative, and 13% of radio. Looking at the Sunday talk shows, Melissa Harris Perry, who, as you know, is no longer on the air, but at the time she had the best representation. 55% of guests on her show were people of color. We looked at, for our original research, 10 particular newspapers, including the Washington Post, New York Times, the top 10 circulation newspapers. And we found that the Chicago Sun-Times had the best parity in terms of representation of men and women. The New York Times and the Denver Post, which were overwhelmingly men. This is for byline, so we looked at who were writing the stories. 68% of men at New York Times and the Denver Post were men. The AS&E survey that we've talked about already, that Susan has also mentioned, that while the gender representation in the newsroom has had some fluctuation since 1999, you'll see that there has not been much growth at all. Today it is at 37.2%. In 1999, it was at 36.9%. Editorial boards, again, not much change there. Looking at the top 10 newspapers, men overwhelmingly 7% versus 7 men versus 4 women, which is the average composite of men, of the representation of editorial boards on newspapers across the country. Sports journalism is probably one of the biggest offenders when you look at women and representation. Sports editors are 90% male and 90% white. Columnists, 12% women. And if you look at on radio, which is even more dismal, women, there are only 2 women of the top 100 commentators. What do women report on? We found that for the most part, men tend to write more about politics, crime and justice, and world politics. Women tend to write more about education, religion, the weather. Again, all very important topics, but it would be good to see more equality and representation across the field. Reuters has a better representation than the AP when it comes to bylines for men and women, although, as you can see, overall, 62% of the Wire's men write most of the stories. The Internet, Huffington Post has the best representation of women who are writing the stories on that platform. Overall, 58% of men who write stories on the Internet, looking at those 4 outlets, Huffington Post, CNN, FoxNews.com, and the Daily Beast. One of the things that we did this year was look particularly at social media companies, because a lot of people are getting their news more from social media than they have in the past. The numbers of women employed at those organizations is still represented equally in terms of traditional media. Again, men, 70% of men, for the most part, are represented from Apple to Google to YouTube. Pinterest has a better representation, but again, still room for growth. Ethnic diversity, there is, again, lots of room to grow there. Most of the diversity, as you can see there, is with Asians, and who represent 4% of the population. The numbers are growing, and the organizations have said that they are more dedicated to making sure that those numbers are representative as we move forward. And we'll keep an eye and see if there are changes as time moves forward. Someone mentioned earlier that women are big gamers. 48% of gamers are women, yet only 22% of the workforce, gaming workforce, is women. When it comes to social media, women continue to dominate, particularly in Facebook. 76% of women are on Facebook. And Tumblr, those are the top two. Women overwhelmingly, more so than men, get their news from social media. 58% of women get their news from social media, particularly from Facebook and Google. Looking at women in film, you may have noticed as you watch various, the top 10 or movies that come out, this study looked at 250 films, of the top 250 films from 2014 to 2015, looking primarily for the roles that women play behind the camera. And most women are producers, executive producers, although you will notice that the number of women who are producers is going down instead of it should be going up. TV broadcast, again, most women tend to be producers and writers. There is some growth in terms of the producers. The other numbers continue to be somewhat troublesome because the number is going on a downward spiral. Who's directing those episodes that you watch on television? Only 14% of the shows that you watch, the episodic ones, the ones that tend to have series, like The Good Wife, or only 14% of those directors are women. And for women of color, the number is even less. It's 2% of women who are directors. Creators, there are very many Shonda Rhimeses out there. For race, there are only 5% of women of color who are creators for television shows, and women, only 11% of creators are women. Men continue to be overwhelmingly represented in who speaks on the screen. That number, again, has had some fluctuation over the years, but again, no big changes, and as of right now, it continues to actually go down somewhat. Women in film, and this is actually a worldwide survey. In the U.S., you know that women tend to be sexualized in film more so than men do, and this unfortunately is a pattern across the country and across the world. Looking at the characters in film, this study from the Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film looked at the racial representation of women and their characters. Most women were white, 74%, 11% were black, 4% were Latino, 4% were Asian. Otherworldly is basically not a human character, someone who may have been a fictitious character or animal or something of that sort. One of the things that we've noticed, which is actually good news, which is that one of the questions people often ask is, so what does it matter if a woman is a director or executive producer or writer? And this study shows that there is a difference, that women, if they are directors or producers or in roles where they can make a difference, that they really do make a difference, particularly in the role of protagonists. If there's a story that's centered around a woman, if there's a woman who is directing the show or creating the show, she tends to have a woman more often who is the leading character. And concluding with our, the Women's Media Center, again, original research, we looked at the Oscars and found that, again, only men overwhelmingly represent the number of people who are nominated, particularly for behind-the-scenes roles. There was a lot of attention, obviously, this year about people of color and our representation, but that number also continues to be as dismal for people of color as it does for women. The bottom line, unfortunately, is, and hopefully that this will trend the other way in coming years, is that men continue to dominate media. Our overall research showed that 62% of news stories are told or written by men, whereas only 37% are told or written by women. Thank you.
You're a real buzzkill. Sorry, I'm just kidding. It's just reporting the facts.
Well, our next presentation is Are we there yet? Updating the question for women in sports journalism by Molly Yanity at Quinnipiac University.
Thank you. I'm going to stay right here because I'm kind of wedged right now with this. Yeah. So I'm just going to stay here and not shake everything up. August 24th, 2015 was a really important day. Does anyone have any idea why? Soccer. No? All right. On your birthday, Jessica Mendoza, a former softball player from Stanford, became the first in-booth analyst for ESPN on a regular Major League Baseball game. Since then, she's taken over the Sunday night baseball analyst position. Was doing a great job. Despite this, the state of women in sports media appears to be little to no better than it was 20 years ago. Using a lot of the numbers that the Women's Media Center put out, as well as reflecting the information that you presented today, we are almost in the exact same spot. And maybe even a little worse, because while those percentages are the same, the people in newsrooms has actually reduced by about 35,000 between 2006 and 2012. The Associated Press Sports Editors Group for 2015 and 2013 rated their gendering hiring practice at F, meaning that at the sports staff, 13% are women, 9% are editors, and columnists are at 12%. And these are the numbers we've been going over basically all day. So one of the things that, the thing that I'm going to be doing is looking into some of these numbers and what it means to the women practicing sports journalism. I was actually a sports journalist for about 15 years. My last 10 of those years were at the Seattle PI, where my journalism career ended where our keynote speakers started. But this isn't new by any stretch of the imagination. In 2004, Dean Marie Harden, who is at Penn State, and one of her students named Stacy Shane, who's now a professor at Bellarmine University, attended the Association for Women in Sports Media conference and conducted surveys and focus groups. I was a Kopenhaver Fellow in San Francisco last summer, and I started talking with Dean Harden about those results, because anyone who does anything on gender in sports media cites these papers that came from those surveys and focus groups. And we were talking about it, and we were just talking about how much sports journalism has changed in the last 12 years. The influx of social media, the importance of personal branding, more numbers to understand your audience. All these things are so different than they were in 2004. So as we were having this conversation, I asked her if she had any plan to update this study, and she was like, Molly, I'm a dean now. No. And I asked her if I could. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be coming back to Miami at the end of July with one of my research assistants, and we are going to be conducting the same focus groups and the same survey with updates for 2016. I'm incredibly excited about this. Obviously, this is a research in progress. I'm not going to come up and kill the buzz again. So I'm just kidding. I'm so teasing you. I wanted to read over some of the research questions that we have, though, and the instruments were just approved by IRB for my university. But if anyone has really good recommendations, I would love to hear them. These are the original research questions. Is how do women in sports media rate their job satisfaction? How do women leave? Why do women leave or consider leaving the field? How do women believe their careers are impacted by their gender? And do they feel an obligation to promote women's sports? Some of the new things are, how do social media affect women in sports media careers? How do women believe they are perceived by their audience? How do they believe their ability to brand themselves is affected by their gender? And whom do women feel is responsible for changing the hegemonic attitudes in sports media? That is really where I am right now until we get these findings. But I'm ecstatic about the possibility of it. The two of them got about 4 articles out of it, and I think that we can do a little, maybe even a little bit more because of the social media aspect of it. Talking about some of, many of the things we've talked about today, sports has actually been a place where this hegemonic attitude has been even slower to change. It's very obvious in the media, and looking at these numbers and how there's so little movement, it's even more tortoise-like in sports. After Jessica Mendoza made her debut on ESPN, the second story about her, aside from just doing that, was the vitriol that she had to deal with on social media. And that's still a story for her. It was the same with Meredith Vieira after she replaced Bob Costas on the prime time for the Olympics, just this last time when he got the pink eye, and she came in and filled in. So the thing is that we're seeing right off the bat is that women are in these more visible positions, but it's not representative of women in sports media as a whole. So, thank you for your attention. Thanks for having me.
Our last presentation, but not least, is the relationship between college women's journalistic career aspirations and their perceptions of female television news personalities. Presenter is Hallie Wenhold from University of Michigan.
Well, while my presentation loads, I am so excited to be here today and present to all of you. I am from the University of Michigan's communication department, currently getting my doctorate degree. And I want to mention that in 8th grade, I gave my career speech on wanting to be a reporter and a journalist. And all through high school and college, I interned for my local television station in the city I lived in, a Chicago suburb, and created news portfolios. And then I interned for an NBC affiliate in college and realized that I actually wanted to study journalism, so that's where I'm at today. And I'm really excited. I'm more cut out for the academia realm. I want to give an honorary mention to my co-author, Kristen Harrison, who is also my advisor at the University of Michigan, who unfortunately could not be here today. So my research really begins with this question: why are women choosing to become journalists now versus 40 years ago? Well, Connie Chung stated that she decided to become a journalist 40 years ago because of her love for writing and her passion for the vocation. These are two very intrinsic values in nature that define one's career. However, now Katie Nolan of Fox News states that women just need to be physically attractive and smart enough to form a sentence to make it in the sports media, perpetuating this idea that physical appearance is an extrinsic work value of importance held in the news industry. So before I move on, I want to further define what I'm talking about when I say extrinsic and intrinsic work values, as they are very central to my overall argument. External factors that lead one to succeed in a career are extrinsic work values, and these include things like wanting a job with a lot of money, having a prestigious job title, or desiring respect from coworkers. They really deal with judgments made of other people about how you're doing in your own work. Also, intrinsic work values are internal motivators that lead one to want to succeed. And these are things like wanting a job with high responsibility, decision-making power, and having a job with skill and ability. But as Katie Nolan mentioned, we seemingly are in this news media environment that is perpetuating and fostering extrinsic work values, which leads to the idea that we're moving from a fourth estate realm of journalism, print media, to a fifth estate world that is dominated in the online domain, where anyone, regardless of network affiliation, professional training, can hope to acquire journalistic fame overnight with the click of a button. Which leads me to my argument that we really are living in this fame-saturated culture. Just last year, reality television had over 16 million viewers. Additionally, the top 2 most followed people on Twitter, in the top 10 rather, are Kim Kardashian and Ellen DeGeneres with millions of followers respectively. Also, past research has shown that specifically adolescent girls are more susceptible to fame and would even partake in risky behaviors like lying, cheating, and becoming pregnant to obtain it, which is specifically why I am honing in on females for this particular study. This research is based on cultivation theory's premise that what one sees on television will thus become the reality. But rather than focus on Gerbner's first-order effects, which state that what one sees on television will become the reality in regards to facts and ideas, I'm extending this premise to Schrumm's 1999 second-order cultivation effects, which not only focuses on facts and ideas, but also values, attitudes, and belief systems, which pairs very nicely with my theoretical approach with work values for this particular study. So my predictions. My first 2 hypotheses deal with college women's work values extrinsically and intrinsically. And what I'm predicting is that as college women perceive their favorite TVMPs, television news personalities, to hold higher extrinsic and intrinsic work values, then their reported personal extrinsic and intrinsic work values will also be higher. My third hypothesis deals with 2 measures, wishful identification and engagement. For this particular study, wishful identification is measured to the extent that a college woman indicates that she wants a future career in a fame-oriented environment, wants a career just like her TVMP that she mentions, or wants to have a type of career like her TVMP, doing the same types of things. Engagement is measured to the extent that one engages with their TVMP on a weekly basis via social media, conversation with others, or watching her on television. And I am predicting that college women will experience increased levels of wishful identification or wanting these fame-oriented careers similar to their TVMPs as they engage more with their TVMPs on a weekly basis. And finally, because we are living in this fifth estate realm of journalism in the online domain, I'm wondering what types of news personalities are these college women going to name when asked to name one? Are they going to be celebrities? Who knows? You'll find out. So my method, I recruited 150 college women from a large Midwest university communication studies pool, and of these 100, I'm sorry?
Which one would that be?
Oh, I wonder. And of these 150 women, 138 completed the survey. The average age was around 19 and a half years. I also designed my survey in Qualtrics, did my data analysis with R, and what you're going to be seeing is a series of multivariate linear regression analyses coupled with short answer responses to add a verbal layer of analysis to my statistical findings. So here we go. These are the top reported TVMPs by the college women. We have Juliana Rancic, Ellen DeGeneres, and Chelsea Handler, which I am going to call non-traditional TVMPs because they have never partaken in investigative journalism in their past. However, we also have people like Diane Sawyer and Katie Couric up here who are traditional TVMPs in nature, which means that they have done investigative reporting. By the way, Chelsea Handler is a comedian, Ellen DeGeneres a talk show host, and Juliana Rancic was the former host of E! News. Entertainment. So I was wondering, well, and as you can see, by the way, I want to mention that there were more non-traditional TVMPs mentioned than traditional TVMPs. But I was wondering if there would be any differences between these two groups with key variables in my study. So I ran some independent samples t-tests, and what I found was that the women who reported non-traditional TVMPs MPs also reported more engagement with their TV MPs on a weekly basis, but perceived these non-traditional TV MPs to hold intrinsic work values of less importance. So my first two hypotheses were supported. However, I think more interestingly is that not only is what the college women perceiving to be their TV MPs' intrinsic work values having a relationship with their own personal intrinsic work values, but what they perceive their TV MP to hold as extrinsically important is also having a significant relationship with their personal intrinsic work value systems. The short answer question I had to couple with this was, how are your work values similar or different than your favorite TV MPs? And of the 99 responses, only 13 of the college women cited differences, and they were traits that they perceived their TV MP to already possess that they one day hope to acquire themselves. And as you can see, there are a mix of extrinsic and intrinsic work values up here, such as respect, motivation, but then also image and fashion sense. So my third regression also shows support for my third hypothesis, but also more interestingly is that mother and father's education measured by high school degree to highest level of degree obtained, doctorate degree or beyond, is having a relationship with wishful identification. Again, the extent to which these college women want to have fame-oriented careers or be like their TV MPs or do similar things in their future. Mother's education specifically has an inverse significant relationship, which makes me speculate perhaps when these college women have more educated mothers in their household, they're less likely to look outside the household to celebrity figures, TV MPs, to model their own work values after. Again, that's just a speculation, but it could be something that this means. We've been talking a lot about mentorship, so this is kind of interesting. The question I had to pair with this was, would you or would you not welcome fame into your future? And 59% of the women stated, yes, I would welcome fame. 38% said no, and only 2% were unsure. The 38% that said no, it was for reasons of intrusion of privacy, blame and scrutiny. But what's interesting here is that this is in direct contradiction to what I found in my wishful identification scale, where 58% of the women indicated that no, I don't want a fame-oriented career. I don't want to be like my TV MP, which leads me to ask myself, why is this distancing occurring? Why is there a verbal distance, or rather a distancing in the survey data versus this verbal closeness? Perhaps the college women are more likely to admit to wanting fame in their future when they're able to verbally justify it versus being asked in a survey response where they know they're going to be numerically judged. Again, we also have this idea that the college women do have a relationship with their favorite TV MP's work values, and more importantly is the fact that extrinsic work values are helping to shape and mirroring not only the college women's extrinsic work value systems, but also their intrinsic work values, going back to this idea that we do live in a fame-saturated society, and this is a real issue that needs to be addressed. Future research should include male and female participants, look at male TV MPs as well, and also investigate other value systems besides just work values, such as relationship values and what people want in future dating partners or spouses. Also, there needs to be more work done on how the millennial generation defines news, because clearly there is a shift going on, and we talked about it earlier, and I was just sitting there thinking, this is so relevant because this is something that I'm really interested in looking at specifically. Again, I want to thank Kristen Harrison, that's her. She was embarrassed that I put this up, but she's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for great insights. Now we are going to move to the questions part. So, well, do we have a microphone that we can? Yeah.
Do you want me to go back up here to my slides? Okay. Yeah, because I want you to go back to the slides. Yes, no problem. Which slide?
I need to see it. Yeah, more back. More back. I think it was that one.
This one?
Yeah, could you go over that again with, you were saying something about like if a...
Mother's education?
Yeah.
Okay, sure, no problem. So mother's education has an inverse relationship with wishful identification. So the extent to which a college woman indicates that she wants a future fame-oriented career or wants to be like her favorite TVMP or do similar things in her job as her TVMP, the higher that is, the lower their mother's education level in their household. Okay. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's a significant relationship at the 0.001 level, so that's pretty high.
And could you also explain, like, or tell me what your opinion is, like, you said more than 50% of the people in your study that they wanted to become famous for their work, or is that what you were saying?
Yes. So in my short answer responses, again, those were analyzed qualitatively, so they weren't statistically analyzed by any means. Yes. So a common theme, well, I counted, so I guess that is quantitative, but 59% of the responses indicated that they wanted fame. Mm-hmm. But some of them were stated like this, and I should mention, yes, but, or yes, to the extent, but that makes sense, right? Because they're able to justify their reasons for wanting fame, which is why I'm seeing this distancing, I think.
You said this is worth looking at, but do you feel like there's something wrong with people wanting that for their work?
Honestly, I don't think that there's something wrong with people wanting fame and notoriety for their work. People want to be appreciated for what they do. And I think that this is a trend, though, that is becoming even more prevalent within our society because we're living in a society that is so obsessed with social media and fame and celebrity. So I think that this is becoming even more something that these college women are going to want in a future career.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Yes, I kept it to 18 to 20-year-olds.
Okay, so given that 2 years ago in Variety, 13 to, I don't know, it's 12 to 14-year-olds were talking about YouTubers as being more celebrity-ful than Jennifer Lawrence, for instance. Mm-hmm. You are only talking about television. What about the fact that television may not be important to all of these women?
Well, I took that into account with my engagement scale, taking the fact that social media is very prevalent today. So every single participant was asked to come into the survey before they took it with a favorite television news personality in mind. So it is specifically, my study is centric to the news environment. So I didn't define what a television news personality was for these women before they took my survey, but I didn't do that on purpose because I wanted to see what types of people they would name. Now, with that being said, they could have very easily named a YouTuber celebrity, but nobody did. So it leads me to believe that they are able to distinguish that much at least. Although,
I'm not worried about the distinguishing, I'm just wondering if perhaps that there are, if you're looking for someone who's representing celebrity to them, that's a very easily obtainable celebrityness.
Sure, yes, but I wanted to focus in the journalism realm, so, yeah.
And I wonder how many of your respondents, that's another point, I just wonder if there's going to be any overlap between what they think news is and getting a news source other than television.
Oh, well, there is. In my short answer responses, I definitely saw that. The college women, a common theme, they wanted their news to be lively and presented in a way that was happy and upbeat. And a lot of them didn't like the fact that they were constrained to the television environment, and they wanted to be able to access their news easily through an app on their phone or something like that. So, but that definitely needs to be investigated more. Great question. Okay.
Any more questions from the audience to the other panelists? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Crystal, you were talking about games, and we're going to go back kind of into the virtual space, which what I'm looking at is a virtual space that's becoming very hostile to women. Mm-hmm. Because of the anonymity of responses, mm-hmm. The idea of doxing someone, the sort of nastiness of Twitter, I hope you get raped, I hope you get raped and die kind of stuff that's going on. Do you see that is that helping or hurting? I mean, is there going to be a change here? What do we need to make that better?
And there has been, as you know, a lot of research recently about online speech, particularly targeted towards women, because of all the misogyny that's been directed towards women online, whether it be in comment sections or in, just directly tweeting at someone or Facebooking someone. The Women's Media Center recently launched a project called the Speech Project, which looks at online harassment towards women, because this is obviously becoming a trend that has not, that is escalating. And women feel not only verbally threatened, but obviously physically threatened by all the comments and harassment that is targeted towards them. As people move more towards online, I think partly because, there was one thought before about, online was a space where there was a lot of, you could say what you want and not really have any judgment or repercussions directed towards you. And I think as time has grown, you see that sometimes that really doesn't matter to some people. It doesn't matter whether they're identified or not identified. And so we're hoping that with the focus look at how women can further avoid these online harassments, how to deal with them, both on a personal level as well as on a professional level, because that trend has not dissipated, and women need more coping skills on how to deal with those particular types of harassment.
I am horrified. That's, I guess, a good way of me to assess how I feel right now. Crystal, thank you so much for sharing those numbers and, the study that you did with silencing girls. And you're brilliant, thank you. It just shows just how many issues we face. And as a young woman, professional woman, I am stuck in a place where I want to pick your brains a little bit as to, I'm trying to find that monster, right? In every story, we have a monster. Who is the monster?
Trump.
True, but in this instance, I refuse to believe that it's society, or it's just men, or it's just fathers or husbands or mothers. I think that there has to be a study of accountability as to what women are doing for themselves, not just about the resources that they have, but what they're really feeling, how they would feel more empowered, and what that would take. So we need to pepper some celebrities on it so that it kind of feels like they have to assess their own reality. So I'm leaving with that. I think that part of my journey as a woman in this industry is to take ownership over my expectations and my goals and proving myself and going for things. But at the same time, in the broader scale of things, what do you think has created this inequality? In one word, what do you think? Or
masculine
elaborate.
hegemony, which sounds, who knows what that means, right? But I just got back from Ohio University, where I was invited to speak to the student media. They had just fired a third of their sports staff from their TV station. And we're talking young men, 18 to 22. And they'd fired a third of them for sexist behavior and sexual harassment. And they asked me to come in and talk. And one of the things, I spent some time really talking to the young women on the staff. And trying to find a path for redemption, because I didn't want the young men who were fired to, some of them just go. But then what is that path to redemption? And in talking to the young people, the thing that really struck me was the way the young women really were negotiating this hegemony and sort of letting it keep building. And it was, I really feel bad for them. And I don't think they really meant it the way it sounded. And that was the thing that got me really fired up. Because the thing is what hegemony is, isn't it? It's not the prejudice. And it's not the, it really is this, I'm going to be the oppressor, and you're going to go along with it, and you're actually going to be okay with it. And then we come here to this, I was so excited for this day, and this has been great. But through the room, how many young men are here? And you're talking about what women have to do. We know what we have to do. You're doing it. You're here, you're doing it. Thank you. And I just think that there is something important about, and yes, about really helping especially you guys being so young, come on, get here. Listen to this. And oh yeah, you might be overwhelmed with it, but you need to hear this. This is because really, I don't think it is on us to keep trying to fix this. We've been trying to fix it for a really long time. And being here and it needs to be reinforced. It does. I'm not saying give up altogether, but it needs to be reinforced. But there is another half of this that needs to be, there have to be guys in this audience. When, I speak for our student athletes, and talking about coverage of sports and just stuff like that. And it's all the women. I'm preaching to the choir. They know, right? They know. And that to me is just getting the younger men here. Robin had mentioned how we raise our sons and how their fathers raise them. That's really important. I'll get off the soapbox now. But
could I add a couple things to that? First of all, I think you're right. I mean, when the young woman, I don't know if she's still here, was talking about when our guest speaker was speaking, our keynote speaker, about feminism, and though it was a dirty word. That speaks directly, I think, to what Molly just said, in terms of the consideration that if you are a feminist, you must necessarily hate men, you must necessarily think that, you want to be better than. And feminism today ain't all about that. It's all about equal pay, equal work. I mean, how easy is that? And I was telling our public relations young lady, I don't know if she's still here, about the importance of finding a feminist significant other, regardless. You go, girl, get yourself a feminist significant other. I don't, if you need to have it be a cat, do that, because frankly, it ain't worth it any other way, right? And to be able to claim that as our own, right? It's not a dirty word. I had a colleague who thought, I can't be a feminist, they don't shave their legs. Wait. I am a feminist, and by God, I'm proud of it. And one other thing to add to this, and I was struck by it when you were talking about, from the ground up. Did you guys hear the NPR story about the young lady, 8-year-old journalist? Yes. Is anybody going to tell a young boy, go play with your trains? What did they tell her? Where are your tea sets and your dolls? You guys know about this, right? OrangeStreetNews.com. I'm going to buy a subscription. God bless her. Because frankly, when we start tamping her down, we're lost. We're lost as a society. And it was horrifying to me. I mean, and everybody knew about it, right? I mean, admittedly, you're right, we're the choir. But it suggests to me that you would never, if you read her Facebook vitriol, the vitriol against this 8-year-old girl, I was ashamed to be an American. I was. Because I thought, how dare we put the fire out in this girl's belly? How dare we? And to me, that's horrifying. And thank you for bringing that up in the sense of there's something systemic and endemic. And hegemony, I think, is a good answer. I don't know if it's the only one, but it's certainly a good answer. So, sorry, I'll off soapbox too.
It's big.
I know, right?
It's on?
Janelle, this is for you. I was really interested in the research that you presented, and you noted that girls were more likely to be censored by boys in your research. But I wondered,
boys, yep.
And of course, we all want that number to be 0 for both. But I wondered, were the girls also more likely to pitch the more challenging topics? Because if they were, then there's a tiny bit of silver lining that they're going after the hard, good stories.
I'm going to drop this bottle and hope it breaks, because there ain't no silver lining there. There was no statistical significance in the types of stories that were pitched. I wish there were, because then it would suggest something that the girls are, but there was nothing that we found that was statistically significant in the types of stories chosen. I would like to ask about, for example, when we do this next round, about gender of advisor, maybe, a number of experiences of years. That's not something that kids would know, so it would have to be something kind of juggled in there, but we did look at that, and there was no significance. Sorry, I wish there were.
Okay, we will have to conclude with this question. If you have more questions, of course, you're welcome to join together for dinner. Like we have. Yeah, actually. Do we have a reception, right? We have a reception, so feel free to. Yeah, to communicate with the speakers and to ask more questions and to talk about other issues or the same issues, but we need to conclude now. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.